right, so let's go ahead and get started. So for everybody that's joining us today, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Corey Patrick. I'm with the Youngstown Business Incubator. And today we're going to have Jim Rafeedie joining us from the Keylan Management Group. So if you're unfamiliar with YBI or doing these webinars that we do, YBI is a Youngstown-based business incubator. We work with any type of startup, any type of entrepreneur that needs assistance getting their business off the ground. That's truly what we're here for. We are a nonprofit and we are in the business of helping educate entrepreneurs. And one of the ways we do that is with our learning labs, and that's exactly what Jim is going to be teaching for us today. So Jim is going to talk about leveraging social selling. Let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about what we're doing. But without further ado, one more thing. We are going to record this. So this will be put up on our YouTube channel and shared on our social media. So if you don't follow us there, I highly recommend it. We post a lot of different resources, different opportunities, and then educational bits like this. So we will record this. You can share it with friends, anybody else that you think might be interested that couldn't join us today. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Rafeedie. Jim, thanks so much.
Great. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it very much. Thanks to YBI for this opportunity. And thank you, Corey, for facilitating today's session. Corey didn't mention it, but you do have the availability of the chat. So hopefully you'll have some questions throughout today's session. Please indicate them in the chat. And Corey and I will monitor that, do our best to respond to your questions. My name is Jim Rafeedie. I'm with the Keylan Management Group. I am a sales consultant with Keylan, and I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to meet with you and to speak with you. Our topic is leveraging social selling, and the subtitle, if you will, is maximizing LinkedIn to increase new prospect appointments through leveraging your centers of influence. In other words, turning cold calling into social selling. I'll spend a moment with an overview of just who Keylan Management Group is. I will define the difference between social selling and traditional selling, talk about the return on investment for social selling, and provide you with a detailed roadmap to get started and implement your social selling methodology. We'll summarize, and at the end, we'll take more questions if we haven't addressed them at that point. And Corey, please, at any time, if you do have a message in the chat, please let me know.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So the Keylan Management Group, our specialty is fractional sales management. And simply think of that as affording a small business with all the benefits of a sales executive without the cost. I have a few slides in a moment that'll provide a little more detail. In addition to that, we do provide executive coaching and strategic planning. We provide sales and leadership development training, and we assist organizations in the implementation of the Entrepreneurial Operating System, also known as EOS, also known as Traction. This is a methodology for business that has been popularized in the book Traction by Gino Wickman. What is the foundation for the Keylan approach to our clients and to the services that we provide are a couple of books. One is Emotional Intelligence, and the other is Crucial Conversations. And essentially, these inform us and help us to maintain a very professional and transparent dialogue with our clients. So these, if you're familiar with these books, they're quite popular. These are part of our value system at Keyland. So what is fractional sales management? All of you are familiar with outsourcing in one respect or another. From anything as basic as facilities maintenance on up through higher value add activities such as recruiting, accounting, IT, etc. And what drives them to do it is they find that it improves the quality and the efficiency of these activities for them while reducing the cost. So applying that same concept, Keyland provides fractional sales management, and the market to which we provide it is small and medium-sized businesses. Typically, these are those that have fewer than 100 employees, if not, in fact, fewer than 50. Typically, they have owners who may not be experts in everything sales related, or they simply may not have the time or the energy to really hold their salespeople accountable. They're focused on growing sales more rapidly, and they can't really justify the cost of a full-time sales executive, hence the name fractional. Typically, the owners we work with wear many hats. Sales is just one of them. They're responsible for operations. They're responsible for the back office. They're responsible for the front office. They're responsible for everything. And it reaches a point where by holding on to some activities actually causes more harm than it does good. Oftentimes we see these owners, by holding on to the sales management responsibility, haven't necessarily defined their sales processes clearly. They aren't necessarily providing for the accountability of their sales representatives. They don't have the time to observe their sales representatives in action. And all of these can, in fact, lead to turnover within their sales representative ranks. But on the other hand, by letting go, it affords them more time. It allows them the opportunity to work on their business as opposed to in their business. Increases sales, reduces stress, and improves morale. So I'll pause there. We're about to get into the social selling aspect after that brief introduction. Any questions at this point, Corey?
Yeah, we have one question that says, does Keyland promote a specific sales process?
Do we promote a specific sales process?
Yes.
Right. So the short answer to that is no. What we do once engaged with a client is to define their specific sales process. And to the extent that it may, in its current state be a bit murky, we help them to document it in a sales playbook so that by the time we're actually working with their sales representatives, their sales process is crystal clear. Does that answer that question for whomever asked? Since we're using chat, I'm going to assume so. And if there's a follow-up question, I'm sure you're going to let me know, Corey.
Yep. And he said, yes, it does. So
great. Okay.
We are good to get into social selling.
Great. Okay. So while I presume that everyone knows what LinkedIn is, it's important to level set, ensure that we're all on the same page with respect to LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has been around since 2003, so it's already been 17 years. In 2003, there were just over 700 million internet users. As you can see, today, LinkedIn has just over 700 million members itself. And certainly the world has changed since 2003. Today, there are almost 5 billion, that's with a B, internet users. And LinkedIn has progressed from a professional network, which it continues to be, to a forum that helps its members hire, market, sell, and learn. And you may very well know that LinkedIn was acquired a few years ago by Microsoft for a price tag in excess of $20 billion. So I think that's some evidence of the acceptance of LinkedIn as a professional network. So why social selling versus traditional selling? There's a good bit of information on this slide, and I'll walk you through it. The key point to take away is in the upper left-hand corner. Traditional cold calling has about a 1 to 3% conversion rate for getting an initial appointment with a prospect. 1 to 3%. That same approach, that same call, that same email, if done through a referral or a mutual connection, jumps to a 30% conversion rate. So if we use an average of 2% for cold calling, a mutual connection increases your likelihood of an appointment 15-fold. So why is that? Looking in the upper right-hand corner. Number one, it's because selling today is more complex. There are more people in your prospect's organization that are involved in the buying decision. And what that means is that the ultimate decision maker is more likely to rely upon the people in their organization for their influence, for their recommendation. Prospects are better informed. 75% of business-to-business buyers now use social media to be more informed on vendors. So by and large, what that means is that the information that you have about your product or your service is likely to already be available and known by your prospect. So it's harder to tell them something they don't know. It's more difficult to educate them. So as a result of this complexity and the availability of information, decision makers are less likely to respond to a cold call. 90% say they never would respond to a cold call. Social selling on the other, so we're characterizing cold calling as traditional selling. And now let's shift to social selling. So social selling, by contrast, is warm calling. It's utilizing your network. It allows you to target more surgically, if you will, your audience. It allows you to focus. If you think about LinkedIn, prospects who are active on LinkedIn are providing you with information about themselves. It's as if you're already having a conversation about them. You know their background, you know their interests, you know what gets them excited, you know what they're looking for. And ultimately, if you have a mutual connection with your prospect, it's a lot easier to get in front of them. I like the simple example. If I need a plumber and I ask my next door neighbor, who do you use? And they have somebody that's tried and true and reasonably priced, odds are I'm going to call their plumber to try to get their plumber come and help me with my plumbing problems. So that warm introduction makes all the difference in the world. I'll pause there. Corey, any questions queued up?
Nope, we're good to go.
Okay, thank you. So the return on investment for social selling. I've already mentioned that for cold calling, the conversion rate is 1 to 3%. Let's use 2% as our example. For you to secure 10 appointments through cold calling at a 2% conversion rate, you'd have to make 500 calls. If you could make 50 calls a day, and it took you 4 hours to complete them, it would take you 10 days or 40 hours to achieve those 500 calls to secure your 10 appointments. I mentioned that using social selling, that the conversion rate is 30%, but let's say that it's only 20%. We'll make the math easier. To secure those same 10 appointments would and in the example you'll see, can be done with 50 emails. Again, at 4 hours, let's say that takes 8 hours. So now in 8 hours, we can secure the same 10 appointments. And I would argue, by the way, they're not the same 10 appointments. They're actually better appointments because these are through mutual connections. And if it's a personal introduction, I'll make a distinction here. This would be if, in my example, if my neighbor not only gave me the name of the plumber, but he actually called the plumber for me. In this case, there's a 50% conversion rate. So to secure 10 appointments through 20 emails could only take 3 hours. So as you can see, we're going from 40 hours to 8 and to possibly even 3 hours of your time to secure your 10 appointments. And these figures are based upon the experience that we've had personally at Keylan Management and with our clients. So we've used this methodology to build our business, and our clients are using it to build theirs. How do you do it? What's the process? Where do you start? So first and foremost, you identify your target audience. So think about your ideal prospect. What industry is it? Which geography is it in? Who within the, what size organization is it? What's the title? What are the titles of the contacts you wish to reach? Once you complete that step, you then focus on your centers of influence, COIs. So a COI is someone who can boost your market access through referrals, testimonials, and word of mouth. In my example, Art Tuttle is such a center of influence. I've known Art for 10 plus years. Once upon a time, Art was a client of mine in a past life. I worked for ADP for 30 years, and Art was a client of mine. So I see Art as a center of influence, someone who can boost my market access. So what I do is I find Art. He's one of my, you'll notice he's a first degree connection for me on LinkedIn. So I look within my first degree connections for people such as Art. And you'll notice that Art has over 500 connections on LinkedIn, and that's a hyperlink. These then are Art's connections, and you may notice that there's 660 results. Now, not all of Art's connections necessarily fit within my target. They're not all necessarily in the geography I'm interested in, or the industry, or they may not have the appropriate title. So I filter Art's connections. This next slide actually contains two screenshots. In all likelihood, in your view of LinkedIn, when you select all filters, both of these screenshots will appear on one screen. So on the left-hand side, you'll notice that I'm interested in Art's first and second connections. You may prefer only his first connections. And I'm focused on those that are within the greater Cleveland area. That's lower left-hand corner. And on the right-hand side, by title, I'm interested in these connections in the greater Cleveland area that are presidents. When I click on the results, it provides me with a list, and there are 21 people that meet my criteria. Then what? I'm going to take these connections of Art's and load them into a spreadsheet. Pretty simple. I list the center of influence, the name of the company, the name of the person. I might also want to include their title. I may or may not, obviously, have their email or their phone number. So how do I obtain that information? There's several possibilities. If you're not already familiar with hunter.io, I recommend it to you. It's an easy way to obtain email addresses for prospects. And another good source of contact information is Lead 411. By the way, hunter.io, there's no cost associated with that. Lead 411 is a subscription. And in the case of a personal introduction, so if in fact Art knows Tim well enough and is comfortable just reaching out to Tim on my behalf, then I really don't need Tim's email address or phone number at this point, because I can obtain it from Art. Next step. So now I'm going to reach out to Art via email. And on your screen is a script for that communication. By the way, and I should have mentioned before, Corey did mention that our session is being recorded. Once the link to the session is available, I'll be sure to distribute that to all of you. I appreciate you may be taking notes, but if you've missed something, please know you'll have access to this session and the screens themselves. So now I've got my list of targets, and I'd like Art's help. So I reach out to Art with an email such as the following. Art, I hope you're doing well. I'm looking to leverage my network for mutually beneficial ways to maximize our relationship. In viewing your LinkedIn connections, I saw several target contacts I'd like to reach out to for an initial meeting to understand their business and share my services. I'd like to review the list with you and share how I can do the same for you. Are you available at, such and such time? And by the way, the reciprocity here, how I may be able to do the same for Art in this example is really critical. This is not all about Jim. This is a mutually beneficial relationship for me and for Art, and hopefully for Tim and the others on the list. So now I have my meeting with Art. In this day and age, that might be face-to-face. It may be a Zoom meeting. And essentially what you have in front of you is a script for getting the meeting started. Art, I appreciate your time. Like I mentioned, I'm working on a new approach to grow my business and leverage my LinkedIn connections. As you know, a lot of people won't be bothered with cold calls and emails from salespeople. And they're usually not interested in connecting unless it's by way of a referral, a connection, or an introduction. I want to review my list of targets that were connected with you on LinkedIn to see which of these you have relationships with such that you'd be in a position to introduce me. Pretty easy conversation with someone that you know. So you have your meeting with Art, and he identifies, or I have my meeting with Art, I should say, and he identifies from the list that I've prepared the names of several connections to whom he would be comfortable introducing me. As a follow-up, I send him an email thanking him. I include the names of those contacts that he agreed to introduce me to, and I make it easy for him. I give him the script. You'll see this at the bottom of the slide. I give him the script to introduce me. So Art then simply, and by the way, these target names, they'll have the email addresses with them as well because I've done my homework. Art simply then can do a very easy cut and paste into his email to introduce me and copy me as he sends these emails. Any questions there, Corey?
Nope.
Okay, very good. Please interrupt me when you have them. This is Art's email. Same as what was at the bottom of the prior slide. He sends it. This is, by the way, this is the best way. This this is the best outcome I could hope for, right? That Art would take the initiative to reach out to these connections. That's obviously very, very nice of him. I will tell you anecdotally that it turns out that when I met with Art, I learned more about the business that he's in today. Art is he's really an expert when it comes to business credit. He has been in the past actually an expert witness in a number of high visibility bankruptcy cases. Well, as it turns out, I have a connection that's involved in providing credit. And so I connected Art with that person, and Art has actually been very, very helpful to them. So now Art has made the introduction. I follow up on it. So my email to Tim begins, Art, thank you for the introduction. Tim, nice to meet you. And I simply ask for a time to meet. No need to get into what I do. Art has already introduced that. No heavy lifting here. And alternatively, if it makes sense to be using the phone to follow up on Art's email, here's a script, again, that you'll have access to for that phone call. I secure the appointment, and I've leveraged a mutual connection to do it. So that's how social selling works versus traditional selling. What's next? Rinse and repeat. So first of all, in your relationship with a center of influence, it's an ongoing relationship. It's something, as I said, that should be reciprocal. So I want to be on the lookout for connections of mine to whom I can introduce Art or other centers of influence. I want to be working to create new centers of influence that can help me through my own networking efforts. So this is an ongoing process. Another source are existing clients, existing customers. So the process with them is it's only slightly different. So first of all, you create your list of contacts within the customer organizations. You look in LinkedIn, do the research to determine the mutual connections. So these would be connections of your clients to whom you would like to be introduced based upon your target market. Just as with the centers of influence, you reach out to your client contacts to get their approval to either reach out directly to the mutual connections, or better yet, if your client will, to have them send the email or make the phone call to these target connections. You set your appointments, and the rest is history, right? You secure new business. But the fact of the matter is, having someone that is already satisfied with your services introduce you to a prospective customer has a much greater likelihood of turning into an appointment than a cold call.
Jim, we have one question that we might want to either entertain right now, or if you are going to cover this later.
Go ahead.
that known. But the question is, they can see this working pretty well with someone that they might know on a more intimate level, but how would you suggest going about that or modifying this script with somebody that they might not know as well?
So there's, it would depend. So if when they say someone they might not, they need to develop more of a relationship with that center of influence. And obviously one of the best ways to do that would be to reach out to them and be very intentional and transparent about it, to let them know that they've identified them as someone with whom having a relationship they see as being beneficial, and they see it as being mutually beneficial. So not only can that person help them with introductions, but they in turn can provide introductions, and they're willing to do that. Oftentimes, we gain connections with centers of influence through our networking activities. So associations, chambers of commerce, whether it's the sales and marketing executives group or other types of groups. So there's certainly some elbow grease involved in that. If the question relates to the prospect, then that's probably a longer conversation. If you're not leveraging a mutual connection to approach the prospect, I think that's a longer conversation. And I'm happy, if that is the question, I'm happy to take that offline, Corey, and I'll provide my contact information at the end.
Thank you.
Sure. So we're really at the stage now where we want to summarize this. So leveraging LinkedIn and the center of influence relationships as opposed to cold calling saves time versus in the example I gave of the 40 hours for 10 appointments. We can invest as few as 3 or 8 hours to get 10 appointments. Saves time, it's more efficient. It's a warm lead as opposed to a cold call. On many occasions, the first thing out of the prospect's mouth upon meeting will be, "I'm meeting with you because you were referred by Art," as an example. That can be sufficient because Art's a trusted friend, somebody they respect. Their referral, their testimonial is sufficient for the prospect to take time to have a meeting. It's an easier way to build a pipeline, and of course, a better way to maximize results. As you can see, 90% of executives never respond to cold calls or unsolicited emails. 84% will engage when connected through a friend or a colleague. If there are more questions, please let me know. We've got a few more minutes if we need it. My contact information is at the bottom. It's simply jim@keylandgroup.com. My phone number is there as well. And our website is www.keylandgroup.com. I certainly appreciate everyone's time today. I want to thank again Youngstown Business Incubator and Corey for affording us this opportunity and facilitating this session. Corey, do you have anything else?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and participating. I know we have a little bit of time left, so I'll just leave a couple minutes. If anybody has any final questions they want to throw in the Q&A or the chat, feel free to do so. Like we've said at the start of this is being recorded, and we will post this to our YouTube channel and our social media. So if there's anything that you've missed or anything that you want to go back on, we will be able to send this out to you. And if not, feel free to reach out to myself or to Jim directly, and we can make sure we get you connected. I have one question here, Jim. It says, I've seen where some people's profile on LinkedIn does not show as a hyperlink. Is this a setting that people can make on their profile? People's connections is what they're referring to.
Yeah, that could be that the person prefers that on their they've set that in their profile, and so you need to be connected with them in order for you to have access to their connections.
Awesome. Any other questions? I know if you're not familiar with YBI, or even if you are familiar with YBI, you would know that Jim Kostler, who's our former CEO, now entrepreneur in residence, who will be retiring soon, we really push using LinkedIn for anybody. It's never too late to start using. We always encourage it, especially if you're, just starting out, if you want to start a business, if you're young into the business scene, whatever that might look like for you. It's definitely something that we encourage and totally recommend. Don had also added that he has a first line connection and he's not able to see their connections. Jim, do you know what that could be by chance?
I'm thinking, I'll follow up, Don. I'm thinking that it's the setting that your first degree connection has.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. We've seen where some of the security just settings that people can set, it makes it a little bit more difficult, but there's different avenues to try and get around that. So it's an interesting play for sure. But all right, is there any other last minute questions before we head out? I know this was a bit of a quick one, so I appreciate everybody for joining us today. We love doing these little learning labs, whether they're an hour or 45 minutes like this one was. So we always try and get a good benefit out of a short amount of time. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. Stay tuned for other learning labs that we might have. Like I said, stay in touch with our social media, and we will be in touch following up after this event. So thanks, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.